Welcome back to the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. Our guest is world-famous Tom Murphy. And Tom, tell us how you got the gig at the 90 Wonderful KISN up in Portland.
Well, kind of a long story short, which I'm not going to make short because I'm enjoying myself here. I had gotten interested in radio through a friend, and we used to like hang out, and I was kind of the kid, he's going to be on the air one of these days. Yeah, well, not, and they were right. So when KISN came to town, kind of sounds like when KISN came to town. I had been doing some radio anyway at a station, a little daytimer. Well, it was a professional station. It was, 800 on the dial, so that didn't mean much.
No.
Anyway, but KISN was just so different. First of all, most of the jocks were really up, and they were very funny. And most of the jocks in Portland at that time really weren't. They just were kind of straight ahead, Here they are, the wagon train singers, oh, why? What are they doing here? But KISN came into town, and it was kind of funny. Portland was kind of provincial. I think they still are, probably, but Don Burden had a big cocktail party, and he gave away a Cadillac convertible to some agency gook, and we're going to knock this market on its ass. Believe me. Well, so, no, you're not. Well, yes, he was. So not only did they hate him for that, and of course giving away the big car, and but also the fact that he told them what he was going to do, and he did it, and KISN just was phenomenal. But what it was he was just using all the great McClendon and Storrs formats. Uh-huh. And there was a station in town at the time, KGW, which was a good station. They had some good talent, but they were kind of, we'll kind of be like Top 40. We'll have some jingles and stuff, but we don't want the guys to talk too fast. And they were really talented guys. It was a good radio station, but at KISN we kind of figured out that probably shouldn't be too hard to take them, and it wasn't, So.
And at the station, how often did you get to break records yourself or debut records?
Oh, it all kind of depended, we had I think we had a KISN pick to click, which of course one night I very carefully called it a piss and click to kick, which I don't know that anyone had any tape on that, but I kind of thought, well, that took care of your career here in local radio, But and it was really funny because the sales manager happened to be in the office that night, and he came in and opened the door and says, "What the hell did you just say?" So I figured, and actually a friend of mine heard it too, was listening, a kid I'd gone to high school with, so everybody knew, what I had done, but it seemed like it went away, obviously, or I wouldn't be, having an interview with you about my wonderful days in radio. But it just was circumstance. I was working at a daytimer, and it was kind of the format I always thought, it came straight from the Lord. They played religion in the morning and rock and roll records in the afternoon. Now, that's pretty hard to beat,
Oh, yeah.
I always thought they should have played the rock and roll records in the morning and then the religion in the afternoon so they could save the souls of the people who had been listening to the rock records. But that was just my thought,
Oh, hindsight's 20/20, right?
Oh yeah, but it just was kind of a odd circumstance, that everything kind of came together, and just right place, right guy, right time, I guess.
Oh yeah. Well, you got to work with a lot of great talents there. The Real Don Steele was there for a couple of years, and
no, just 1 year actually. Oh. He didn't come in until '63. I'd already been there 4 years by the time Don got there,
Mm-hmm.
and loved him. He was so good, and Don was kind of a force of nature, just hi Don, what? Thank you, Don. But we and I remained friends, right up until he passed away, so that was.
Well, 1 year in '64, he ran for president. Tell us about that campaign for becoming our chief executive.
Oh, You mean like Biden?
Yeah, like Biden.
Yeah. Well, the idea well, first of all, we had a bridge in town called the Steele Bridge, and I think the only reason it was named the Steele Bridge was because it was probably, there was a river that just ran right through Portland. It just separated it, the whole city. And I think that might have been the first bridge that was actually made out of steel. All of the other ones were probably wood. It sounds kind of funny, nowadays to think of it that way. But anyway, Don decided to run for president, and of course he had the Real Don Steele Bridge as his platform, the strongest platform in American politics. And we went up on the bridge one time to do a remote, and Don's dressed in an Uncle Sam outfit, which, if you can just imagine the Real Don Steele up there in an Uncle Sam outfit, and I'm up there I'm just being people that he's interviewing, so, and we had both gotten a little fuel, at the Jack Daniels service station before we went up there, and we were having quite a good old time, and finally a cop came up, and they weren't bad. I mean, he just came and said, you guys got to get off of this. You got traffic backed up to, to California up there, And so Don says, hide the evidence. Throw the remote gear into the river. Well, we had some kids up there with us, and they were ready to do it. I said, Don, they're kids. They'll do it, So I don't know what Don's thinking was at the time, but it was typical of Don, But that was great. We had a lot of fun in Portland. KISN was a good station. It really, really was.
Oh, yeah. And I think you said that Dick Saint worked with you guys up there, too.
Yeah, Dick Saint worked up there. Johnny Williams, who was, famous from, doing the overnighter there forever on KHJ. And Dick Saint. Let me see who else comes to mind.
Now, isn't that where Don Steele gave Dick Saint his name? I remember he told me a story about that one time.
Yeah, Don was, or Dick was working at a station in Salem, which was a good station. I think it was KBZY, if I recall, which God knows I do occasionally recall things. And his name was Dick Middleton, and Don named him Saint. And he called over to the state. He had met Dick at our hangout, which was the Fish Grotto, which was a real popular seafood restaurant, but had a great bar that poured strong drinks, and so that kind of became KISN's official office. And so, he said, come on over here, baby, click. So I walked. It was just a block or so away from the station, so I walked over and opened the door, and he said, he's sitting over there, he said, I named him Dick Saint. What do you think, baby? And I thought Middleton was okay, but, which was why Don was PD and I was the evening man, I guess, But those were great days at KISN. I was only 19 when I got on KISN, so I was pretty young,
So Don was your program director at KISN then?
Yes, yeah, and afternoons, yeah.
So I guess being both PD and afternoon DJ, obviously guys were friends, till he passed away. How did you establish a friendship? Because sometimes it's like, don't become a friend with the PD too much, otherwise it's going to come back and bite you. How did you, or was it just
we just did. I don't know that we gave it any thought. I liked him right off the bat. He was, he came into the station, and I was in the production room, which was, I don't know what the hell I was even doing there in the morning like that. But anyway, he opened the door and said, hi, baby. I said, hi, Don. I love you. And that was pretty much it took care of all of the PDing and everything with Don and myself. He never, he would come up with stuff, but I never ever we never had air check meetings. Let me put it that way.
Oh, okay. Now,
he just the thing was, and I don't mean to be appalling here, but by this time at KISN, I had really established myself. I was talking 40 shares in pulse ratings. So who's going to mess with me? I show. I mean, if I was doing something, I just don't ever recall being called on the carpet for anything. Why would they?
That's good.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was nice for me, you know. But and then at KJR was pretty much the same thing. Pat O'Day, you know, liked what I was doing, so you know, I only got one phone call from Pat, and I had wandered. He had a great line. He said, "Tom, you're kind of wandering outside the format corral," which was like. I don't know where the hell he dreamed that up, but and of course I had to admit it. I realized I'd talked myself into a pile, you know, and but he did suggest that I try not to do that again, which I did. You know, I didn't do it again. I made sure I didn't do it again. You know?
The only thing I can think of is you sounding like one of those freeform FM jocks. Yeah, man, gather around your radio and get stoned and.
I didn't do that, you know.
That's the only thing I think of going off the corral.
I see. Oh, yeah. No,
impersonating that.
Yeah, just wandering, you know, like, you know, I was watching TV the other night, and, you know, my color wasn't right. You know, I couldn't get the tint to go. Well, that's the kind of crap that Pat would have suggested I might want to rethink the next time. You know? I don't think I ever did anything like that, but no, it's just, I was pretty much in control, you know. I mean, I just, you know, I kind of knew, you know, about how far I should go and what would work and what did. By that time, of course, I'd done so much air work that, you know, I had a pretty good handle on it, you know.
How much time did you usually prep before the show?
None.
Wow.
Well, that's not right. I mean, I would read the paper, you know, and if I saw, you know, an article in the paper or something. You know, I would make a note of a mental note or jot something down. But Pat was really funny. He got us all loose leaf notebooks, you know, and we were supposed to, you know, write down your stuff, you know. But the thing with me was somebody asked him about me one time, you know, well, what was, you know, world famous Tom Murphy like? And he said he had it all in his head.
Wow.
And that was kind of neat, wasn't it? I was always very complimented about that, especially coming from Pat, you know. But I just, you know, if I saw an article in the paper or something, because I mean, I would read the paper, you know, before I went to work, you know, and in the afternoon, and I might think of something, and then I did an awful lot of stuff off the record titles and stuff, you know. So can't think of any at the moment, but. Yeah, I just you know, some guys would you know, write everything out, and I tried that one time, and it always sounded like I was reading whatever I had written. You know, so I decided maybe that wasn't the you know, the course that I wanted to take.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie UHF with Weird Al Yankovic?
No.
There was this commercial for a place called Spatula City. And so at the end of the commercial, there's this guy who's the owner, and he's reading the cue card. You could tell he's reading. He's like, I loved Spatula City so much and all of its products that I bought the company.
Kind of sounds like, you know, a couple of the guys, you know, I worked with over the years, you know.
And in Portland, how many concerts did you get to, I guess, introduce artists at? I mean, where was the biggest artist you ever got to introduce in the Portland area?
Let me think here. Well, we did Beach Boys, you know, which, you know, everybody did Beach Boys.
Yeah.
But, I did more emceeing in Seattle than I did in Portland, mostly because I was on in the evenings.
Oh, that's right.
And,
yeah.
You know, so you know, like the concerts were in the evenings, and I was flogging the heavy hits there in the KISN window. You know.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I'm kind of, you know, drawing a blank here on who all I emceed a lot of people in L.A. because that used to be a little perk that the KRLA guys got. You know, you get $100 to here they are, the Fuzzy Snake. You know, I'd pick up a C note and out the door. You know, really a good deal. You know.
Yeah. I remember you told me back in 1964 or 65, there was a disc jockey named Tom Murphy in Texas, and he had a contest or some sort of special promotion, get to meet the other Tom Murphy, which was you. How did that come about?
Well, there was the PD that I had originally in Portland, Hal Raymond, was now the PD of KBOX, where Tom Murphy was, which was not his real name. I don't mean anything by that. Years later, he was working for a record company, and he sent me reams and reams of notepads from the desk of Tom Murphy. He says, "You could use these, can't you?" He wasn't working there anymore. So I had not the real Tom Murphy notepads, for a long time. But he was a good guy, and the idea was that, I was on active duty with the Air National Guard in Wichita Falls, which was like an hour and a half flight from to Dallas. Mm-hmm. And, when you were in training, you'd have the weekends off unless you got KP. And if you got KP, if you had any money, you'd sell it to some poor guy who needed the money, which is, I thank God I had a little money, and I got Dave Obadensky to do my KP one weekend, which was not a pleasant gig. But anyway, they kind of dreamed up the second Tom Murphy contest, mm-hmm. and they were giving clues and clues and clues. And I just flew up, and of course a bunch of girls, came out and ran out onto the runway practically, so they could be the first. "Are you the second Tom Murphy?" I am, young ladies. Nice to meet you. And don't back into the propeller when you. So that was how that worked. It was really funny. This is kind of inside, in the weeds here a little bit, I guess. But Tom Murphy became the PD down in San Diego at KCBQ. Mm. And I was out of KISN this time and kind of, hanging around L.A. and thinking about, the fact that I was beginning to run low on money, and it might not be a bad idea to try to actually find a job, And so he called me, and he said, he was the PD and the morning man, and he didn't want to be both. He said it was too much work. He wanted to do afternoons and be the PD, which was cool. Mm-hmm. And he said, so you want to do mornings? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, of course you can't be Tom Murphy. He said, how about if we call you Bill Drake? And I thought, boy, that was in about 10 seconds. Bill Drake would have heard about that and exposed me, and then put the ephes on me ever working in radio again. So that was my moment to do mornings at KCBQ, which I at least had enough sense at that point, and still had enough money that I could turn it down.
The funny thing is that Bill Drake's real name wasn't even Bill Drake; it was like Philip Yarborough. Yeah,
right. Yeah, Phil Yarborough. Right. Yeah. Well, he wanted to be Drake on Wake. That was the whole thing. He was working at WAKE. I think it was in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
And, he was Drake on Wake. And he was really neat. I was, trying to, get a job there. Don, said, gee, you got to come down here and meet Drake. So I flew down. We had dinner and hung out. And, I finally moved to L.A. and he kept. Bill just liked to hang out, and he would buy, the drinks and food. So, I was all right with that, and I would have rather have had him buy a fewer meals and hired me, but anyway, he told me I had the job. And now I don't know whether, I never really asked, I didn't, why open that can of worms? He wouldn't tell me the truth anyway, so. Not that he was a bad guy, just was, he told me I had the job. He said he'd call me the next morning at the motel and I'd come down and sign the contract. Well, I didn't hear from him. That was the first thought that maybe something had gone amiss, Mm-hmm. And so then later I got a call from Bernie Torres, who was, Bill's guy. And he said, I said, well, I thought you guys were going to call. He said, well, we had a prior commitment come that we weren't expecting. Well, I don't know whether that was true or not, but I do know that the all-night show went to Johnny Williams, who I knew from Portland. We and I worked together there. And so anyway, Bill, I got PO'd, obviously, and went back to Portland. Then I came back down to L.A., and my friend Jeff said, call Bill. He said, Bill, I said, well, gee, they stiffed me, man. He said, no, call him. So I called him, and he... hey, let's get together. And then we didn't actually, I don't think, get together, but he wanted me to go down to San Diego with him, just to hang out. I would have been fine, didn't care. Yeah. And then he called back and said, well, he wasn't going. He said, you said, what about production director? You want to be the production director? Well, I said, no, I don't know anything about production. I really didn't. I mean, and little did I know that the production director would tell Morgan he had to record a spot. He'd record it and tell Morgan he was great, and that was the end of it. My idea of a production director was the guy up in Portland who was our production director. Actually, I worked with him in both Portland and Seattle. But I mean, he would tape stuff, he'd edit, he'd do all of that. I mean, I could edit and everything too, for that matter. But at that point, you would have had an engineer doing it for you. You didn't have to do anything.
Oh yeah.
And I probably should have taken the job, but I didn't. And well, Bill, I don't feel I can measure up to your alleged high standards. So I had people later say, boy, that was a dumb move. You should have done that, which they may have been onto something with that, I guess.
This is The Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We're talking with world-famous Tom Murphy, and next time we'll find out how he became Afternoons on 95 KGR in Seattle.